This unit of nutrition focuses on the nutrients that our body uses during physical activity, the nutrients that we need more of while we are more physically active, and how our body responds to physical activity. We'll look specifically at some of the essentials of fitness, some of the aspects of fitness. There's multiple ways that our body is fit. It's not as simple as just having muscular strength. There are other aspects to making sure our body is healthy and in good shape, and we'll look at the health benefits long term of those, and also the nutrients required to maintain those. So for most of you, this unit is very logical. It's going to make a lot of sense. It's kind of what we already know just from our own lives. The more you exercise, the more you're physically active, the better you feel, the better you look. And the data backs that up. Without a doubt, you can look at just about any study, and anybody who is regularly engaged in physical activity, even if it's just moderate physical activity, they tend to live longer on average, and they tend to also these things. Sorry about that. They tend to live longer on average, and they also tend to have a higher quality of life. When they are alive, they tend to deal with less health issues. And now we know that nutrition and physical activity are interactive. They complement each other. I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again. It's not as simple as saying, well, I'm just going to eat right, and that will help me lose weight, or I'm just going to exercise, and it doesn't matter what I eat. We know that there are aspects of our nutrient health that are complemented by exercise, and aspects of our physical body that no matter what nutrients we consume, we need that physical activity to keep our body healthy. And this list makes a lot of sense, again, to most of you. You probably already know this from personal experience, or have seen the data out there as well. And this list is much longer than this, but these are kind of the highlights. People that are in physically good shape tend to sleep better at night. They tend to have better nutritional health. They have better body composition, or a higher percentage of lean muscle mass in comparison to fat. One thing a lot of people probably didn't know before, but you'll learn now, is that people who are physically fit tend to increase their bone density, which is a good thing. As we age, our bone density tends to decrease, and this is why as we get older and more into our elderly years, we're more likely to suffer from fractures, especially hip fractures from falling. Especially women, after they go through menopause, they tend to lose a lot of bone mass. When you are physically active and you do weight-bearing exercise, that not only helps with maintaining muscle density, but also bone density as well. So it's very good for women, especially as they get older, to not skip out on the weights. Hit the weights just like the guys do, because it's good for your bone density. Physical activity helps us boost our immune system. There are certain aspects of our immune system that are turned on when we're more physically active, and that helps us fight colds and other infectious diseases. We know that certain cancers, we can lower our risk for those with physical activity, and then of course just lowering your overall risk for high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Without a doubt, physical activity contributes to reducing your chances of those diseases. Also, some other things, people who are physically fit tend to have a stronger self-image, longer life, higher quality of life. They also tend to combat anxiety and depression less. Not always. I mean, there's a lot of issues that play into our emotional well-being and our mental health. But without a doubt, we do see strong correlations, if not some causations, between good physical health and good mental health. So lots and lots of benefits to being physically fit. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there's a couple key aspects of physical fitness that I want you to know. Understand this terminology and what it means, and also be able to identify examples of it. So for instance, if I say on a test question, the ability for you to touch your toes without any injury and then return to your original position, that denotes a certain level of flexibility. Any ability of a joint to move through a range of motion and then return back to its original point of origin without injuring yourself, that is referred to as your flexibility. Some of these are really easy to identify. If you bend your elbow, your hand approaches your shoulder, and then you straighten it back out again and straighten your arm. The ability to move through that range of motion denotes your flexibility. Anyone who's ever had an injury before, torn a muscle, torn a tendon or ligament, knows that that can really harm your flexibility. Also, if you're not physically active and stretching well, you will see that, yeah, maybe I could touch my toes in high school, but now in my 20s or 30s, I can't touch my toes anymore. That's an indication of a lack of fitness of your muscles, that inability for you to stretch those muscles without injuring them. You're losing that because you're not stretching often enough. So flexibility is one of those aspects of fitness that we need to maintain. And some good activities to do that are a good stretch before and after you work out, yoga, Pilates. There's lots of different types of aerobic activities too that include a lot of flexibility components. But always make sure you stretch really well before any exercise you do, and also in your cool down too, to help increase your ability to move through that range of motion. Muscle endurance, this aspect of fitness refers to the ability of a muscle to contract repeatedly within a given period of time without becoming exhausted. This would be like grabbing some soup cans out of your kitchen cupboard and lifting them above your head 100 times. To do it once is not testing your strength. To do it 10 times is not probably testing your strength either. But if you had to carry a couple big heavy cans of soup over your head 100 times, up and down repeatedly, by the time you get to that 98th, that 99th time, your muscles are quite fatigued. And so the action of repeatedly working that muscle, maybe there was not that much resistance, but just that repeated motion, that indicates a certain level of muscle endurance. A lot of people, when they're trying to build tone and less bulk in the gym, they focus on muscle endurance. They'll do lower on dumbbells and barbells and bench press. They'll do lower weight, so there's less resistance, but they'll do more sets or more repetitions. Maybe they'll do 100 pounds at 4 or 5 sets of 20 instead, even though they could maybe do 200 pounds of weight at 2 or 3 sets of 5 or 6. They'll increase the sets and they'll increase the reps when they're exercising because it gives their body more muscle endurance. Also, it tends to lay down the lean muscle mass in a more elongated pattern, so you get more that leaner look than the really bulky look when you do high-level resistance activities. So that is muscle endurance. I'm going to just skip ahead really quick here to the next slide, since I touched on it already. Muscle strength is that other aspect I was referring to. The ability of your muscles to work against resistance is what we denote as muscle strength. So again, if you're trying to build up more mass or more bulk in your lean muscle mass, you will tend to do a heavier weight and with more resistance. You maybe can't do as many repetitions, your endurance isn't as strong, but your strength is denoted here more, and it builds more bulk to your lean muscle mass. So that ability to work against resistance, whether it be pushing your hands together and using the opposite hand as the resistance, or getting down on the floor and doing some push-ups and using gravity as your resistance, or going to the gym and lifting weights. That is denoting muscle strength. So the ability to work against resistance refers to strength. And then the final aspect of fitness, you have flexibility, endurance, and strength, but we have a fourth category here called cardiorespiratory endurance, or cardiovascular endurance, sometimes it's referred to. And this is the aspect of trying to keep your heart in shape. Your heart sometimes gets overlooked, but it is a muscle just like other muscles in your body. Obviously, it's a little different kind of muscle. It's cardio muscle versus the skeletal and smooth muscle in other parts of your body. And it functions very differently in lots of ways than other muscles. We don't use our cardio muscle for the purposes of direct movement, but the actual contraction of that cardio muscle helps to run our circulatory system. So just like the other muscles in our body need to be maintained and kept fit, so we need to maintain our heart as well. And so another aspect of fitness is maintaining that aerobic activity, maintaining that cardiorespiratory endurance. And really what you do to maintain that endurance is work your large muscle groups, your large dynamic muscle groups in your legs, throughout your core, at moderate to high intensity levels for prolonged periods, to put more activity on the heart. As you work larger muscle groups in these higher intensity ways, they demand more nutrients, including oxygen. And to get that oxygen, you need your circulatory system to pump the blood there. Thus, the heart will increase its rate so that it can meet the demands of those large muscle groups during high activity levels. So, things like jogging, biking, swimming, sprinting, all of these different things demand large muscle exercise and thus put the higher demands on the heart and help keep the heart fit. So, again, flexibility, muscle endurance, muscle strength, and cardiorespiratory endurance. These are their essential aspects of fitness, and really 4 different ways in which we need to always be constantly aware of our fitness. To be really thin and lean is not enough if your heart is weak. And to have extreme muscle strength, but to not be able to flex and bend can really limit your body's ability. So all 4 of these aspects are very important for overall health. So in dovetailing with that, it makes sense then that you want to do a variety of physical activities, because the more variety you have, that's going to produce the best overall fitness. When you just work one type of exercise all the time, you never work your muscles different, or you never work them in conjunction with other muscle groups. So very, very important to do different types of exercises so that you're constantly working your muscles in different ways and working those 4 aspects of fitness, as well as it helps to keep you from getting bored. It's nice to go for a bike ride, or to go for a swim or a walk, or do something a little bit different to get in those aspects of fitness. So stretching enhances that flexibility, weight training helps with muscle strength and endurance, and any sort of aerobic activity will improve your cardiorespiratory endurance. And when I say aerobic activity, aerobic refers to something that requires oxygen. Oh, let me just go back quick. Aerobic activity is anything that requires oxygen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We do have some anaerobic activity when our muscles have great demand on them and we are unfit and we can't get oxygen there fast enough. We can burn our sugars in the absence of oxygen. That's called anaerobic respiration, and a lot of you know it as fermentation. We can do this. Yeast can do this when they make beer and wine for us. But our muscles can do this too if the energy demands are great and the oxygen supply is low. So I just threw this in here. I'm not going to test people on this specifically, but I just like to show people the wide variety of different activities you can do that target all these areas: cardiorespiratory, strength, flexibility. And again, strength, really you can put strength and endurance underneath here together because it depends on the resistance level and the repetition level too. So strength and endurance a lot of these different activities can be put in the same category. So all sorts of activities. You don't have to be in a gym to be in shape. You can take advantage of outdoor activities, indoor activities, sporting events, walking around your campus, walking around your neighborhood, skipping the car ride and taking a walk, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. All of those things really help. It really, all those little things are the things that really can add up to help increase your physical fitness. A lot of people that are not happy with their body or not happy with their health will tell you, I don't know how I got here. I don't know how I got to where I was 50 pounds overweight or 100 pounds overweight, or where it was difficult to climb the stairs. And the reason they don't know how they got there was because it didn't happen overnight. It happened little bit by little bit. Every day, day after day, they let themselves go just a little bit more. They skipped the routine, they skipped the exercise, they skipped the opportunity to do a few things. And if you just reverse that trend, and instead of looking at it with this overwhelmed sensation of, gosh, how did I get here? I'm so overwhelmed, how do I fix it? Well, you didn't get there overnight. You're not going to get back to where you want to be overnight either. Just start making those tiny, small changes. I do silly little things. You would just laugh if you were in my house. My husband laughs at me all the time. While I'm brushing my teeth, I squat up and down. I do squats. I literally just bend my knees and squat my butt down as low as I can get it. And I do that the whole time I'm brushing my teeth. And if you figure you brush your teeth for a couple minutes, well, that's not that long. But try it. Try after you shower and you get dressed or whatever, and you're brushing your teeth before you leave for the day. You've got those 2 minutes. You're standing there brushing your teeth. Squat. Try it. Go up and down for the entire time and see how tired you get. It's exhausting. little things like that. During my family and I, we don't really watch a lot of TV. We don't even have cable, if you can believe it. No iPhones, no iPods, no iPads in my house. We really try to be outdoors as much as we can, but occasionally I'll watch a cartoon with my kids, or we'll put in a family show, or there might be something on the primetime channels that we just get with our box. And during commercial breaks, I get on the floor with my kids and we do sit-ups or we do push-ups together. We make it a fun thing. And those little tiny things that you do, you kind of recapture those moments in time that really slip away from you, that you lose where you're just sedentary and sitting there. You'd be surprised how much extra activity you can get in, and every little bit helps. It all helps with your health. So I touched on earlier aerobic exercise versus anaerobic exercise. When we're burning our sugars and our fats and proteins for energy, we typically require oxygen to do this. Well, to do it efficiently, you need oxygen to do it. And so when you have aerobic exercise occurring, you're working really hard to deliver oxygen to those tissues so that they can yield the maximum amount of ATP. So when you fully break down glucose all the way with oxygen, you yield a ton of ATP, like 36, 38 ATP. But when you don't have oxygen, you hit a roadblock and you can only make a few ATP, and then you have to reroute down a different pathway doing anaerobic use of glucose. It still gets you some more energy, and it does kind of recycle some of the pieces needed to go back and do aerobic exercise. So anaerobic burn is a good thing in the sense that you still do get energy. But when you don't use oxygen to completely break down glucose into ATP, you create some uncomfortable byproducts. So if you're out of shape, a lot of us experience this, January 2nd, January 3rd. It's a new year and we're all at the gym working out hard and we're all running really hard, and we're sucking wind, trying to breathe as hard as we can to meet those oxygen demands. A couple days into it, you start to feel extremely sore. And the reason why is because you're not fit. You're not in good shape. Your lungs are not in good shape. And so you're forced to use those anaerobic pathways. And we know this anaerobic pathway as fermentation. Like I mentioned earlier, yeast do this as well, and so do some bacteria. And we utilize yeast to do this with our grapes to make wine, and with our barleys and grains to make beer. We use it with potatoes to make vodka. So when you look at all the different alcohols that we consume, those are made through what is called alcoholic fermentation, and yeast do this for us. But our body can do it as well. And when our body does it, we do what's called lactic acid fermentation. It's a way of breaking down our sugars and getting some energy, not as much as we'd like, but getting at least something, and it doesn't require the use of oxygen to do. But the sad thing about it is this little byproduct here, this lactic acid, it's basically a byproduct of the glucose that hasn't been broken down all the way, and it gets stuck in your muscles, and that's what makes your muscles sore. So when you've really maxed out your workout and really worked hard, you will know it a couple days later because you'll feel that soreness in your muscles. It'll go away, of course. Your circulation will pick up that lactic acid and take it to the liver, where the liver will detoxify it and process it and get rid of it. Just like the liver processes the alcohol you consume when you're drinking, it will help break this down and get rid of it. So you will feel better eventually. And the more you work out and the more consistently you work out, the more efficient your lungs will be at getting oxygen to your tissues, and you won't have that incredible sore feeling that you did on January 3rd, January 4th. So that's why you feel so sore when you're out of shape, and it's why you need to be consistent and keep working out, because it gets better. You'll notice when you switch it up or you do a different type of exercise, you might feel a little bit of that soreness again, but that's a good sign, because that means you're giving your body a different type of exercise or adding some variety that is working your muscles in a different way that you haven't done before, and you're not as efficient at it yet. So that is why you feel that pain when you make that New Year's resolution. But it's a good pain. Just keep it going. So how does our body burn calories? We hear that terminology a lot. How do we burn calories? When we're looking at how we support our body activity, Again, we typically use glucose as our circulating blood sugar. That's from our carbohydrates. We can burn fatty acids from our fats, and to a small extent, we can use amino acids from our protein. But again, not much. We don't get a lot of our energy yielding nutrient from protein. During rest, when we're not physically active or physically demanding a lot of our body, we get about half of our energy from fatty acids, about half from glucose. There's a little bit from amino acids. Again, it's probably the split that you see in the calorie consumption. Remember, about 45 to 65% of your calories should come from carbohydrates. About, what was it, maybe a third or so, or maybe 20% should come from fats, and then about a third of your body weight in grams should come from proteins. And again, everyone's a little different, but you can see about half it should come from glucose, about half from fatty acids, and a little bit from amino acids. But what happens when you start becoming physically active is the body will adjust its fuel mix and start recognizing the glucose that's circulating in the blood is being consumed really quickly. And so it'll start to burn some of that muscle glycogen. It'll start to break down muscle glycogen into glucose and use that. And then as that activity continues, there'll be different messenger molecules, different hormones that will signal the liver and the fat to start to liberate those stored nutrients. So if you want to burn fat efficiently and consistently, you need those messenger molecules to be released. And the only way that those get released is if you're physically active. And even more so, what the body will do is when you are physically active for 10, 15 minutes, it might not really adjust its metabolic pathways very much because it still has plenty of glucose around. But what happens as you continue that activity, if you go at least 15, 20 minutes, the longer the better, get up there to 30, 45 minutes if you can keep a good level of moderate to intense activity going for even 20, 30 minutes, but up to 45 or 60 would be great. That is what your body needs to start burning fats at a higher level. If you really want to tip the scales and start metabolizing the fats at a greater rate than a significantly greater rate than what we are metabolizing the sugars, your body has to be driven like that for more than 15, 20 minutes. Otherwise, what happens is it'll rely on its glycogen stores. And then all of a sudden you stop at 10 minutes and it goes, oh, okay, well, that's all we needed, so we didn't need to liberate all the fat from our fat cells. But once you get up there into that 15, 20, 30-minute range of intense or moderate, even moderate activity, the body starts to go, oh, holy crap, she's still going. And this glycogen is going to run out. So we need to start tapping into some of those serious storage reserves. So, if you think about it, it makes sense. The goal of the fat is to be stored for when times are tough. If you only are active for 5, 10 minutes, times are not that tough yet, right? So it's going to hold on to the fat. But if you start to challenge your body and get on that treadmill for a good half hour, 45 minutes, or go for a jog, or lift weights with quick repetition between sets and really get your heart rate up there, 20, 30, 40 minutes, your body starts to go, oh my gosh, she's not slowing down. I'm going to run out of my glycogen and I better start to change to more of a fat burn. So that's graduate level biochemistry in a nutshell in Nutrition 101 form. But if you just stop and think about it logically, it really does make sense. Until you really put those demands on your body for energy, it's not going to really burn fat at that significantly higher rate. It's going to be about a 50-50 split during rest, maybe a little bit more sugars. But if you really want those fats to burn, you've got to be physically active. Some of the nutrients that you do see we need a little bit more of when we're exercising, again, those B vitamins, they help with metabolic pathways. Remember, your B vitamins are coenzymes that stimulate metabolic pathways. So if you're burning sugars and fats, you need those pathways working. Iron, you need iron within your blood cells to help transport oxygen. Repairing worn tissues, vitamin C, new cell division and repair. B vitamins, also some magnesium in there too, muscle contraction. Sodium, potassium, and calcium are big with water balance and muscle contraction. If you are physically active for really long periods of time, you should eat a banana, eat something with some potassium, Really fit professional athletes, marathon runners, they'll have very specific nutrient combinations at their water stations that have combinations of sodium, potassium fills to replace those electrolytes that they sweat out. And then, of course, vitamin E. Anytime you're doing metabolic pathways, you create free radicals, and vitamin E will help clear those up to keep your chances of cancer low. So with all of that, the most important nutrient when you're exercising without a doubt is water. It far surpasses the need of any other nutrient. And if you lose that water, your body chemistry will be altered, you'll dehydrate, and you can go down pretty quickly. The water that you consume during physical activity is mainly lost through sweating to keep the body cool. Again, the act of sweating itself isn't what keeps you cool. The act of the sweat on your skin evaporating is what cools you down. For that water to go from liquid sweat on your skin to evaporate off into a vapor, that takes energy to go from liquid to vapor. Just like when you boil water on your stove, to turn water from liquid to steam, you're adding heat to it to get that to happen. And so that heat that you're adding to that sweat to get it to evaporate is coming from your body. So it's taking away that heat to keep your body cool. So anytime you're doing any sort of physical activity, dehydration is a real threat. And right away, the first thing you're going to feel is thirst. Of course, your wonderful body recognizes right away those when you're physically demanding on it, and it'll trigger that thirst reflex. So pay attention to that reflex. Don't ignore it, because that can quickly lead to fatigue, headache, and confusion. And you don't always notice these symptoms. Sometimes these will onset very quickly because, remember, during physical activity, you're also getting those adrenaline rushes. You're getting those endorphin releases. And sometimes endorphins can kind of mask the early stages of major dehydration. So pay attention to your thirst reflex. Even if you don't think you feel thirsty and you've been very physically active, especially on a hot day, drink water, because chances are you can use it. You're going to be losing it faster than you realize. If you lose water loss of 7%, you're likely to collapse. So you don't need to lose a lot of your body percentage of water to go down hard. And you can die very easily from dehydration. It happens every year. You hear stories about high school football players at summer camp doing 2-day practices that die. Extremely fit 16, 17-year-old young men that go down from heat exhaustion and dehydration and die. So it's a very real threat that you have to pay attention to because you can die from it. Again, sweat is what helps cool the body. So when it's really humid out there, the sweat won't evaporate from your skin because the air is already so saturated with moisture. So you have to be very cognizant of exercising outside on hot, humid days because you can very quickly get what's called a heat stroke. A heat stroke is where basically your baseline body temperature elevates to the point, a really deadly point for internal core temperature. The body just has no way of cooling down, and so heat stroke can ensue, which can be very, very dangerous. Again, drink enough fluid before, during, and after the activity too. Rest in the shade when you're tired, and then wear light-colored clothing and lightweight clothing as well so it can breathe. You want to wear light-colored clothing or white clothes because white, basically when you look at sunlight, what you're seeing is white light. When it bends through a prism or a rainstorm, you see the rainbow. You see all those beautiful colors of the rainbow. Well, basically, white light is all colors. So if you wear light-colored clothing or white clothing, I am seeing that white being reflected from you. So when sunlight is hitting those white clothes, you are reflecting all of that white light. If you are wearing a green shirt, basically what that means is you're absorbing all frequency colors of the rainbow with the exception of green, and green is what you're reflecting. That's what plants do. Plants, when you look at plants and you see that they're green, what they're doing is they're using all the wavelengths of light except green to do photosynthesis. So they use the wavelengths of light other than green to excite electrons and make high energy molecules such as glucose. But they don't use green, and so that is what gets reflected, and that's what we see. Therefore, if you're wearing dark colored clothing, like if you were wearing a black shirt, if white is all colors, black is no color. So if you're getting hit with some bright sunlight and you've got a black shirt on, black is going to absorb all those wavelengths of light, and then you're reflecting no color, and that's why we see the black. So this is why you always feel hotter when you're wearing dark colored clothing, and you feel cooler when you're wearing light colored clothing. Light is just another form of energy. It's another form of energy, and if you absorb it in your clothing, you're going to feel it as heat. That's how you're going to feel that energy. When you're, if you're running or exercising outside, especially in cold weather, sweating can lead to hypothermia very, very quickly. Of course, when you're being physically active, running the race or running the marathon, whatever it may be, you're sweating to keep your body cool so that you don't overheat. But if it's cold, you can lose heat too quickly, especially when you stop. Because when you stop, your body is still expelling heat at a very high output, but you're no longer being physically active. And so your body really needs to stop that. It needs to stop letting that heat out. And if you don't stop that, you can suffer from hypothermia, which is a below normal body temperature. And that can also kill you too, and it can cause some serious problems. Low heart rate, collapse, all sorts of things. Early symptoms of hypothermia are shivering and euphoria. Shivering is actually an action, really it's something we've evolved and kept from our caveman days, where our fast twitch muscles will shake. And it's just like, think of like when you rub your hands together really fast. When you rub your hands together really fast, you create friction, which creates heat. And that's what your muscles are doing. They're trying to twitch really, really fast. And that shivering aspect is that twitching aspect to try and create heat from just like rubbing your hands together. So shivering is a sign of your body trying to keep itself warm, trying to generate heat. But when that shivering stops, that person is in serious trouble. So if you ever run into somebody who's been exercising outside when it's cold and they quit shivering, you need to get them some serious help quickly, because that basically is a sign that the body is giving up and getting ready to die. So anybody who quits shivering and is still very, very cold, you're going to see them very disoriented. Apathy is going to set in. They're not going to care. They're going to feel very weak. Also, along with that sense of euphoria, along with the apathy, you actually see people, hypothermia victims, people that are getting close to death, they actually start taking their clothes off. They have this euphoric sense that they actually are warm. And you'll actually see this in people who camp or hike in cold weather that get lost. They'll find them by the trail of the clothes they leave behind, because they'll actually start stripping, because they're experiencing such a strange euphoria that they actually no longer can sense how cold they are. And usually when this happens, death is imminent. So you need to be very aware of that if you're exercising in extremely cold weather. A hydration schedule, if you're always like, oh, I don't know how much to drink, I like to put this in here just so you can have a sense. You should have 2 or 3 cups a couple hours before the activity, 1 to 2 cups just before you start it. And then every 15 minutes of the activity, you should drink at least a cup. And then when you're done, after the activity, you should drink 2 to 3 cups for each pound of body weight lost. And you would be extremely surprised how much body weight you can lose during extreme physical activity. If you're sweating good for an hour, hour and a half, you're going to see a significant change in your weight. So if you're having a hard time gauging how much water you should drink, you can kind of use this as a guide to help you. Again, I always tell my students, I know it's hard to gauge how much water you need because we're all different. We're all different ages, different genders, different athletic ability, different environments in which we work out. But as a general rule, check your pee, check your urine, and if you see that it's getting to be more of a concentrated yellow after a workout, that means you need more water. Just take note of how much you drank during the workout, and if your urine looks a little bit darker yellow, the next time you work out, you need to be drinking a little bit more. So just you want to make sure you have that kind of straw yellow color to your water, or to your urine, and if you don't, that's a sign that you're a little dehydrated. And again, just to kind of keep current here, I'd like to refer to some of these different things you see in the store. You've got your Powerades, you've got your vitamin waters, you've got your Gatorades, and they're fine. I'm not going to harp too much on people about these. I like to make sure that you're informed as to what's in them, what you're getting, and what you're actually paying for. Basically, when you drink these Powerades and Gatorades, what you're essentially drinking is sugar water. What they'll do is they'll put typically like a high fructose corn syrup and some natural coloring and flavoring into some water, and then they'll also add some electrolytes. They'll add sodium and potassium, which is a good thing. These vitamin waters have some more vitamins in them, which is wonderful. But really, these types of things are designed for athletes. Gatorade was actually marketed originally to the Florida Gators, and I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's Florida State. Can't remember which ones are the Gators. Florida State or University of Florida. One's the Seminoles and one's the Gators. And my husband would kill me right now that I don't remember that. But the Florida Gators, the college football team, the scientists and doctors on their staff were trying to come up with some sort of concoction that would replace the fluids lost and the electrolytes lost during practice. I mean, in Florida is very hot and humid, and so their players were going down all the time because they were losing all those electrolytes and all that fluid. So they designed this drink called Gatorade, and so that's where we get the name Gatorade, from the Florida Gators. And they ended up marketing it on a worldwide scale. So again, these drinks are great for really physically fit athletes who really burn through their water and their electrolytes quickly. And they need to replace these things without a doubt. But really, for the average person, it's not really necessary. As long as you have a well-balanced diet, you're taking a multivitamin, you're drinking your water, it's, tossing a banana. We get plenty of sodium. Maybe toss a banana into your diet and drink a glass of water before you go to work out. This is really overkill. And again, I'm not saying don't drink them. You're going to die if you drink them. No, that's not the case. But the average person who does an average amount of activity, they sell these to you on TV with these beautiful, fit people that are in awesome shape. And, they exercise at an elite level where they have a legitimate need to be drinking these things. Average people don't. So again, buy them if you like them. I'll grab a couple of these for the cooler in the summer with the kids. But really what you're paying for is mainly sugar water. You could essentially get the same thing for free by filling up a couple empty water bottles from the tap and bringing a banana with. So just be aware of what you're paying for when you get those things. Supplements and performance enhancement. There's a lot out there now with growth hormone and using testosterone and other steroids, androgens for enhancing performance. And I don't get into a ton of that here, but just remember, anytime you're taking something that alters your hormone balance, there's going to be side effects to that, and maybe not all of them desirable. There are instances where people are taking heavy levels of steroids that have had issues with depression and suicide, issues with fertility. It's been known to cause the testes to shrink in men and reduce sperm counts. And again, remember me. I always say, if you really want to do it, can you sustain it for life? Does it really matter if you're taking creatine phosphate if you're going to quit doing it after 3 months? I mean, what are you going to look like in 10 years? Was that creatine phosphate really going to help maintain muscle mass? Probably not, and it's expensive. So a lot of these too, like hydroxycut, Xenadrin, a lot of these are not FDA tested. A lot of them are very expensive. I always worry with students about their kidneys. Creatine phosphate is a molecule that assists with how the body uses ATP. So a lot of people will take creatine phosphate to kind of boost their energy consumption so that they can, if you have more ATP available, your muscles are able to do more work. Again, that ATP is that energy molecule of the cell, and you need that to get your muscles to contract. So a lot of people who like to bulk up will use these, they'll get those protein powders, and then they'll also buy creatine phosphate. But it can cause issues with your kidneys because you got to process all these waste products out. So just be very aware of that. It's when you look at nutrient supplements in general, as long as you have a well-balanced diet, you don't really need them. There's very few that really actually enhance your performance. And for the average person, it's not about performance. You're not going to the gym and getting on the treadmill because you're training for a marathon. You're going there because you want to be healthy. You want to feel good. You want to lose weight. Those of you out there taking this class that, are training for marathons or are training for Ironmans or things like that, this, there are special places where you go and special groups that you work with and special physical trainers and doctors and training groups that you combine with. You might find some internet groups that have special training programs and running programs where you do certain training logs every day. That's a very different type of performance from what the average person is doing. And so I'm teaching this class more from the perspective of just the average Joe trying to be healthy. If you're the average Joe trying to be healthy, as long as you have a well-balanced diet and you're getting plenty of water, you really shouldn't need to be taking nutrient supplements and all these other things. They're expensive and they're overkill. If you're a real fit athlete and you're training for something, you probably already know way more about this stuff than I'm going to touch on even. So if that's something that you're thinking of getting into real fit athletic performance, professional athleticism, you're going to be going down a little bit different path than what this class is going to teach you. From my perspective, for the average student, for the average person, eating a well-balanced diet, drinking plenty of water, maybe taking a multivitamin to kind of fill in the gaps if you have a bad day, and trying to exercise at least a little bit every day. If you could just get even 30 minutes in every day, 30 to 60 minutes would be great. The more the better. If it's just 10 minutes walking down the block and back to get the mail, or walking to the corner grocery store and back, it's better than nothing. So, focus on that when you're thinking from the average person's perspective. What sorts of things I can do to just get myself in better shape and get myself a little bit healthier. Again, recognize what nutrients are needed in more quantities, especially water, and why water is so important, especially when we're being physically active. Be able to define those essential aspects of fitness: flexibility, muscle endurance, muscle strength, cardiorespiratory endurance. Know the difference between aerobic and anaerobic muscle burn or muscle activity. One uses oxygen, one doesn't. So know those essential aspects of fitness and how to apply them, and recognize some different examples of different exercises and how they relate to flexibility, endurance, strength, and cardiorespiratory endurance as well.